After losing her husband, Claire disappeared into the mountains to grieve alone. But one snowy night, something unexpected appeared on her porch. Not a person. Not a pet. But a wounded bobcat, who would change everything. The wind scratched at the cabin walls like claws. Claire sat in the corner of the room, wrapped in David's old flannel shirt, watching the fire flicker in the stone hearth. Outside, snow fell gently, covering the trees, the trail, and the gravesite behind the house. She hadn't spoken to anyone in 37 days. Since David died in a crash on that icy road, nothing felt real. Not the food she barely touched, not the sun that tried to rise every morning, and certainly not the sympathy cards stacked on the table like unopened bills. She hadn't come to the mountains to heal. She came to disappear. Until something scratched at the edge of her world. It was past midnight. Claire was curled on the couch, half asleep, when she heard it, a soft thump on the wooden porch. Then a low whimper. Her heart skipped. She reached for the rifle David kept by the door but paused when she heard the sound again, gentle, broken. She cracked the door open and froze. A young bobcat stood there, soaked from the snow, its left leg bleeding badly. Its eyes, bright gold and wide, locked onto hers. Claire's breath caught. The creature didn't move. Didn't growl. It just stood there, as if waiting for her to decide something. And strangely, she didn't feel fear. Not exactly. She felt seen. Slowly, Claire stepped aside, holding the door open. "If you come in," she whispered, "you better not try anything." The bobcat limped inside. He collapsed in front of the fire, shivering, too weak to run. Claire grabbed one of the old towels from the bathroom, hesitated, then knelt beside him. "You're just a baby," she murmured. "What happened to you?" His leg had a deep gash, likely from barbed wire. Carefully, she cleaned it. The bobcat flinched but didn't swipe at her. He watched her with those gold eyes like he was studying her soul. That night, Claire laid an extra blanket near the hearth and sat beside him, sipping tea she couldn't taste. She didn't sleep. Neither did he. Before dawn, she whispered, "I'll call you." Rocky. Rocky didn't leave. For the first few days, he barely moved, licking his wound and sleeping beside the fire. Claire fed him bits of fish and boiled chicken, surprised at how gently he ate from her hands. "I'm not sure if I'm healing you," she said once, "or if it's the other way around." Rocky didn't answer, of course. But he blinked slowly. Softly. Like he understood. It was strange how quickly he became part of the rhythm. She cooked. He watched. She painted by the window, and he sat at her feet. When she cried in the middle of the night, Rocky would jump on the couch beside her and lay his head on her lap. His presence wasn't loud, but it was grounding, like gravity. Like home. Each day, Claire whispered a little more. She told him about David. About the crash. About how she hadn't screamed, not once, not even when the police knocked. Rocky listened. And that made it easier to breathe. One morning, she found him at the back door, staring out at the woods. "Thinking about going?" she asked. He looked back at her, eyes calm, tail twitching. Claire opened the door. "I won't stop you." Rocky stepped outside, disappearing into the trees. Her chest tightened, but she didn't cry. Not this time. She spent the day on the porch, painting the snow-covered forest. She left the door cracked open, just in case. Night fell. She lit a lantern and curled up under a blanket, alone again. Until she heard the soft thump on the porch. Rocky was back. And that was the night everything began to change. The storm hit without warning. Thick clouds rolled down the mountain like smoke. Thunder cracked. Trees bent in the wind. Claire rushed to shutter the windows, her breath fogging in the cold air. Rain began pounding the roof like it wanted in. Rocky sat in the middle of the room, unmoved. Watching her. She had learned to read him by now, the slow flick of his ears, the rise and fall of his sides, the way he tilted his head when she spoke. He didn't act like a wild thing anymore. He acted like he belonged. Claire poured hot water into the chipped kettle and rubbed her hands. The storm had cut the power again, and the only light came from the fireplace and the flickering oil lamp on the table. As she sat down, Rocky leapt onto the couch beside her. Not hesitantly, comfortably. Like this was his place too now. She smiled weakly. You like storms, huh? He blinked, slow and sure. She let her hand rest on his thick fur. It was strange, how soft he was for something built for hunting. He leaned into her touch. That was the first time she felt her heartbeat for something other than pain. Days passed. Rocky became more than just company. He became routine. He followed her from room to room, waited outside the bathroom, even lay beside her on the porch as she drank her morning tea. His leg had fully healed, and he was strong now, lean muscle under his thick fur. But he didn't leave. Not even once. Claire began speaking to him without thinking. You hungry? She'd ask, setting down a bowl of eggs. Don't hog the blankets, she'd grumble as he sprawled across the couch. David used to whistle when it rained, she whispered one evening. The tune still stuck in my head. One night, she woke from a nightmare, David's voice calling her from the frozen lake, and bolted upright, gasping. Rocky was already at her side, standing on the bed, staring at her with alert, concerned eyes. She reached for him without a second thought and pulled him close. He didn't resist. He curled beside her, body warm against hers. The sound of his steady breath calmed her faster than any medicine ever had. She fell asleep with her hand on his back. And when morning came, neither of them moved for hours. Their closeness became quiet magic. Claire would sit in the armchair with her sketchbook. Rocky would be lying across her feet. Sometimes she sketched him, those eyes, that wild beauty. Sometimes, she caught herself drawing David. And sometimes, she drew both. One evening, she lit a few candles and played a vinyl record David had loved. Soft jazz filled the room. Claire moved slowly to the music, just swaying, trying to remember what it felt like to live inside her body again. Rocky sat and watched her, his eyes golden in the candlelight. She laughed, actually laughed. What? She asked. You think I forgot how to dance? He didn't answer. But he moved closer. She sank to the rug beside him and scratched behind his ears. Then something unexpected happened. He gently pressed his head against her chest. Not like an animal marking territory. But like someone needing to be held. So she did. And the storm outside raged on. She began letting him sleep on the bed more often. At first, it was just the edge. Then closer. Then curled up against her legs. And one night, after a long, silent evening where she couldn't stop thinking about how empty her hands felt, she invited him up beside her, under the covers. He came without hesitation. Claire lay there, facing him, her fingers resting lightly against his shoulder. His breath was warm on her face. "I miss him every second," she whispered. "But with you here, it hurts a little less." Rocky didn't blink. Didn't move. But he stayed. And that meant everything. Then came the stranger. Claire was out near the garden, trimming dead branches from the pines, when she heard footsteps, not animal ones. A man appeared from the trail. Late 30s, scruffy, with a large backpack and a too smooth smile. "Hey there," he called out. "Didn't mean to scare you. My GPS is all over the place." "You live here?" Claire didn't answer right away. He stepped closer. "Just need to rest a while. Maybe use your phone." Rocky appeared out of nowhere, silent as wind, standing between them. His growl was low. Deep. The man's smile faded. "Whoa. Is that thing yours?" He took a step back. Claire put a hand on Rocky's back. "He's with me," she said. The man nodded. "Right. Well. I'll just get back to the trail." He left fast. Rocky didn't relax until he was out of sight. That night, Claire didn't ask Rocky to sleep beside her. He came anyway. And this time, when she wrapped her arms around him, there was no hesitation. She held him the way she used to hold David. And Rocky pressed closer. Not like a pet. Not like a wild thing. But like someone choosing her. Spring came late to the mountain. Claire stood barefoot on the porch, the morning sun melting the last patches of snow. Birds chirped, a fox darted through the trees, and the creek behind the cabin flowed freely again. It was the kind of morning David would have loved. But she wasn't thinking about David. She was watching Rocky, curled on the porch beside her, soaking in the sun like he owned it. She leaned down and stroked his back gently. "We made it, didn't we?" He purred, soft and steady. The scars on both of them had healed, but the bond between them had deepened into something no one else could ever understand. Something unspoken. Something whole. One afternoon, Claire left the front door open as she cleaned inside. A distant rumble made her pause. An engine. She stepped outside and saw a green pickup climbing the hill, kicking up dirt. She froze. Visitors never came up this far, intentionally. The truck stopped. Two men stepped out. Uniforms. Wildlife officers. Her heart dropped. "Morning," the older one said. "Sorry to barge in. We're with the state's wildlife response team. Got a report about a bobcat seen limping near this area a few months ago. We're doing a routine follow-up." Claire kept her face calm. "That was months ago. I haven't seen anything since." The younger officer walked toward the porch. Rocky had already disappeared, vanished into the trees like a shadow. "We'll just take a quick look around, if that's all right." She didn't want to let them in. But saying no would raise suspicion. She nodded. Of course. They searched the woods behind the cabin, the shed, even under the porch. Claire kept her arms folded tightly, hiding the tremble in her hands. After 15 tense minutes, the older man returned. "Looks clear. If you do see the bobcat again, please don't feed or approach it. They're unpredictable. Dangerous, even." Claire smiled politely. Understood. They drove off. And Claire's knees buckled the moment they disappeared down the trail. That night, Rocky didn't come back. She left the porch light on. Put a bowl of chicken outside. Waited by the window, hours passing like fog. But the woods stayed silent. Claire lay awake in bed, hugging David's pillow to her chest, aching in a place she hadn't felt since the funeral. 3 nights later, a familiar shadow appeared on the edge of the woods. Claire opened the door before he even stepped onto the porch. "Where were you?" she asked softly, tears already filling her eyes. Rocky padded forward, then stopped. His eyes were different. Older. Sharper. Like he'd made a decision she wasn't ready to hear. She knelt down and touched his face. "You don't have to go," she whispered. "They won't find you. I won't let them." But Rocky didn't move. He stepped forward and pressed his head to her chest, one last time. She held him tightly, her tears wetting his fur. And then, he turned. And walked into the forest. This time, he didn't look back. The days that followed were heavy but different. She didn't cry like she did after David. Not this time. Because this time, something had been returned to her, something she thought was lost forever. Love. Not the kind people talk about at weddings. Not the kind written in letters or whispered in bed. But the kind that stays in your bones. The kind that saves you when nothing else can. The kind that comes on 4 paws, with golden eyes, and doesn't need words to be understood. A month later, Claire planted wildflowers where Rocky had once laid. She painted him on a large canvas, his body curled near the fire, his eyes calm and full of knowing. She hung it over the fireplace, next to David's photo. And on stormy nights, she swore she still felt the weight of Rocky beside her, curled at her feet. Years passed. Claire grew older. Softer around the edges. Her hair turned silver, and the cabin grew quieter, but never empty. She told her story only once, to her niece's daughter, a curious girl with a quiet heart. The girl asked, "Was he just a pet?" Claire smiled. "No. He was never mine. He just chose me for a while." The girl looked thoughtful. "Do you think he loved you?" Claire looked out the window, toward the trees. And whispered, "I know he did."